There were 67 unread messages on her phone. That's what I saw first. Her phone was buzzing nonstop on the edge of the bathroom sink, screen lighting up every few seconds with another notification, another name I didn't recognize. I wasn't snooping. I was cleaning up shattered glass from a perfume bottle she'd knocked over earlier, accidentally, before storming out of the house barefoot. The messages weren't for me. She had told me, hours earlier, she needed air. She didn't take her car. She didn't take her wallet. But she took her red lipstick. The one I didn't even know she still had. And somehow I knew. I don't know how I got from our quiet kitchen to that unfamiliar driveway 3 neighborhoods away. I don't remember unlocking her phone with the birth date of the dog we lost last year. I don't remember how I found the address buried in one of the messages that said, "Tell your husband whatever you want. He won't come here." But I came. And when I did, I didn't knock. I walked in like I belonged there. Music was playing. Loud. The kind of music she used to dance to when we first met, before she started rolling her eyes at anything that made her feel something. There were people everywhere. I don't remember any faces. Just lights and heat and voices that blurred together. And then laughter. Hers. I would have known it in a hurricane. I followed it down a hallway that smelled like smoke and champagne. I opened the door. And she was there, standing in the middle of the room, completely exposed, holding a plastic cup like she hadn't just taken off every piece of who we used to be. She looked at me like I was the one who didn't belong. And then, she laughed again. Not embarrassed. Not ashamed. Just amused. Like I was part of the entertainment. She didn't cover herself. She didn't scream or run or try to explain. She just turned her body slightly, took a slow sip from the red plastic cup, and smiled. Like I was interrupting a movie scene where I wasn't cast. I stood there, frozen, my hand still gripping the doorknob like it was the only thing keeping me upright. There were at least 4 other people in the room, and not one of them looked surprised to see me. That's what broke me first. Not the betrayal. Not the nudity. Not the neon lights painting her skin like she was part of some abstract art piece. It was the fact that no one even flinched. One guy, shirtless, just walked past me with a bottle of something in his hand and muttered, "Awkward," like I was the problem. Another girl, someone I think used to follow my wife on Instagram, laughed and said, "Didn't know this was a couple's party." Alora didn't correct her. She didn't say a word. Just raised her eyebrows and looked at me like I was the last person she expected to show up and the first person she hoped wouldn't. I opened my mouth to speak, but I couldn't find a single word. My thoughts weren't just scrambled, they were gone. Like my brain had dropped everything and run away without me. She was still staring, still smirking. And then, with the softest shrug I've ever seen, she turned her back to me. Just turned around and walked across the room to pour herself another drink. Completely naked. In front of everyone. Like I didn't exist. Like the last 8 years of my life had been a shared hallucination. Someone turned the music up. A guy leaned over to whisper something in her ear, and she laughed again, louder this time. My heart didn't break all at once. It cracked like slow ice under a heavy step. I took one step into the room, then another, and for a moment, I felt like a ghost haunting my own marriage. Nobody looked at me. Nobody cared. I was just part of the furniture. "Alora," I finally said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. It was dry, small, stupid. She turned her head halfway, just enough to acknowledge I was still there, then looked at the guy next to her and said, "See? Told you he'd show up eventually." That sentence, that exact sentence, that's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some drunken lapse in judgment. She had planned this. Not just the betrayal, but my arrival. I didn't know whether to scream or collapse. I think I did both, silently on the inside. That's when I saw it. On the table beside the bed, my wedding ring. Not hers, mine. I hadn't even realized I wasn't wearing it. How long had she been preparing for this? And what the hell came next? I left the room before I did something I'd regret. I don't remember walking back down the hallway, but I do remember someone shouting, "Close the door, bro," behind me like I was the one causing the mess. The music swallowed the words. I ended up outside, hands trembling, legs weak, back leaning against the fence of a backyard I'd never seen before. My breath felt shallow, like I was trying to inhale through a straw jammed with cement. My heart wasn't beating, it was punching. The worst part? I didn't even cry. Not then. I just kept thinking, she brought my ring. She brought my ring. To take off. Like it was a prop. Like I was a prop. And suddenly, I realized I hadn't seen my backpack at home in days. The one I always left by the laundry machine. My sneakers were missing too, the ones she said were too dirty to keep by the front door. Little things started flashing through my brain like crime scene photos. Her deleting photos from her phone last week because storage was full, her muted conversations on speakerphone that ended the moment I walked in, the 3-day migraine she had that made her sleep in the guest room, and all the times I thought I was just being paranoid. No, I wasn't paranoid. I was just stupid. I sat down on a cold patio chair and stared at the moon like it was going to send me answers. Why would she do this? I gave her everything I had, my time, my support, my terrible attempts at poetry on anniversaries, my dog before we had to put him down. I worked overtime to help her launch that dumb eco-lifestyle blog that made no money, but gave her something to be proud of. I was the man who fixed her car when it broke down in the snow at 2 a.m. The man who made her soup when she was sick, even though I can't cook to save my life. I wasn't perfect, but God, I showed up. So why this? I wanted to call someone. Anyone. But I knew how it would sound. Hey man, I just walked in on my wife naked at a party, and everyone acted like I was the Uber Eats guy who brought the wrong order. Who do you call with that? My mom. She already warned me once about Alora's free spirit. My brother? He thinks I'm spineless for not standing up to her more. No, I had no one. I sat there in the dark until a girl I'd never seen walked outside. She had glitter on her collarbone and smelled like smoke. She looked at me like I was a lost child in the wrong department store. You okay? She asked. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say I was fine or that I was just leaving. But all I managed was, how long has this been going on? She blinked. You mean Alora? I nodded. Her expression didn't change. That was my answer. She sat down beside me in silence. She didn't say another word. She didn't need to. Because sometimes the quiet is the loudest confession of all. I didn't walk straight to my car. I couldn't. My legs were moving, but my mind was running in circles, screaming at me to do something, but not telling me what. I ended up back at the front of the house, hidden behind a hedge like a thief, watching shadows flicker in the windows as music pulsed inside. All I wanted to do was go home and pretend the night hadn't happened. But another part of me, the small pathetic part that still hoped there was some reasonable explanation, wanted to see more. I hated myself for it, but I stayed. I crouched there in the dark, the smell of damp grass and cigarette smoke mixing with the sour taste of betrayal in my mouth, watching the house that wasn't mine and the woman who was no longer mine. It felt like staring at a stranger's aquarium and realizing you were once a fish inside it. Through the window, I saw her moving from room to room, still wearing nothing but confidence, talking to people like a hostess at her own twisted celebration. A man leaned down to whisper in her ear, and she laughed in a way that made my stomach drop. My wife, the person I'd once thought shy and private, had orchestrated this entire performance. And I, the dull husband with my boring job and my loyalty, had become the punchline. I thought about barging back in, screaming at everyone, demanding answers. But I couldn't even feel my hands. My body was shaking, not from rage but from this hollow, weightless dread. I felt like an abandoned marionette whose strings had been cut. That's when my phone buzzed. Not a call. A notification from my security camera at home. The kitchen motion sensor had been triggered. I opened the live feed. There, on my counter, was a note propped up against the cooling rack where the lemon cake had burned hours earlier. A note in her handwriting. I couldn't read what it said from the blurry camera feed, but my own house had become part of her game. She had left something there for me. My chest tightened as a new kind of fear took hold. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. She was rewriting the narrative of our marriage while I was still standing in it. I stood up, knees stiff, palms dirty from the hedge. I didn't know whether to confront her now, drive home, call the police, or simply vanish. My heart kept repeating her name like a chant, but my mind was whispering a different word: escape. The girl who had sat next to me on the patio earlier stepped out the front door again, holding a jacket over her arm. She paused when she saw me and said quietly, "You shouldn't stay here." Her voice wasn't cruel. It was a warning. She walked past me without waiting for a reply, leaving me alone under the buzzing porch light. I looked at the house one more time, at the shadows on the wall and the sound of my wife's laughter spilling out of an open window like smoke from a fire I couldn't put out. And for the first time since I'd met her, I realized she wasn't coming back to me. Not tonight. Not ever. not the version of her I knew. I turned toward my car, the cold metal of the door handle grounding me, and thought, if she's left a message at home, then that's where the real story is. My fingers were trembling as I slid behind the wheel. The house behind me kept glowing and pulsing, but I pulled away slowly, headlights off for half a block like a fugitive. I didn't cry until the second stop sign. The drive home was both too fast and unbearably slow. My hands clutched the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing in the universe. My mind played loops of her face, smirking, uncaring, distant, and that damn laughter. The way she laughed with him, with them, with everyone but me. I barely remember the traffic lights, or even turning onto our street, but I do remember pulling into the driveway and seeing that every window in the house was dark, like the whole place had gone to sleep without me, or died. The air in the house felt colder than it should have. I stepped in and was immediately hit by the smell of burned lemon and something else, her perfume. Faint, but still there. Like the ghost of her had walked in after I left and sat on the couch, kicked off her shoes, and watched the walls crack. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I knew this house in my bones. Every creaky floorboard, every dent in the drywall from when we tried to hang shelves and failed. I walked to the kitchen, heart pounding, and there it was, the note. Right where I'd seen it on the camera, propped up against the cooling rack. The lemon cake sat beside it, collapsed and bitter, like a metaphor too on the nose for even my messed up life. Her handwriting stared up at me in bold black ink. Curtis, don't be dramatic. Let's talk tomorrow. No apology. No explanation. Just that. Like I'd caught her leaving the cap off the toothpaste, not exposing herself to strangers like our marriage was a worn-out costume she couldn't wait to throw away. I stood there, gripping the note, waiting for the part where my brain would make this all make sense, where I'd wake up or discover some hidden reason that didn't involve betrayal. But no such rescue came. I was alone. Fully, embarrassingly, pathetically alone. The fridge hummed like it was mocking me. A glass somewhere in the sink cracked itself. I sat down at the table and just stared. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. I remembered hanging it there 3 years ago. We were drunk on boxed wine and optimism. She wanted it tilted slightly, said it gave the kitchen personality. I said it looked like it was broken. We laughed. We actually used to laugh. Now I couldn't even breathe right. I picked up the note again, searching for meaning in the handwriting, as if maybe there was a code or a clue or some fine print at the bottom. But it was just 4 words. Cold. Straight. Dismissive. I flipped it over. Nothing. I checked the trash can for ripped pages. Nothing. Then, for reasons I still don't understand, I opened the freezer and found 2 plane tickets wedged behind a bag of peas. 2. Booked for next Friday. Her name was on one. The other name wasn't mine. I couldn't move. Couldn't blink. Couldn't even rage. I just stood there, holding frozen betrayal in my hand, while the rest of the kitchen kept humming like none of this was new. Like this had already happened, and I was just late to my own ending. And the worst part? I still wanted her to come home. The name on the second ticket hit me like a head-on collision. It wasn't some random stranger. It wasn't a secret alias or a new guy from her office. No, it was someone I knew. Someone I had let into my house. Someone I had spoken to about our marriage like an idiot confessing his sins to a fake priest. Theo. I dropped the frozen ticket onto the floor. The sound it made was small, paper soft against tile, but the impact was loud in my chest. Theo was my coworker. Not even hers, mine. The kind of guy who knew where the snacks were in our break room and asked about my weekend with fake sincerity. We'd shared rides to off-site meetings. Once, he even brought me soup when I had the flu. He was always there. Friendly, harmless, background noise. I never saw him coming. I stumbled back from the freezer like it had burned me. I had no plan, no roadmap, just this growing need to do something. So I grabbed my laptop off the couch and opened it with trembling hands. My fingers hovered over the keyboard like they were afraid of what they were about to summon. I searched my email for Theo. The results were almost nothing. 2 forwarded reports from months ago. But then I typed in Alora's name. And that's when it got worse. A message from her to herself. A draft, saved but never sent. The subject line, "It'll be over soon." My chest tightened. I clicked on it, praying it was something unrelated. A poem. A diary entry. Anything but what it actually was. It was a goodbye letter. Not to me. To her friend group. She was planning to leave. To vanish, practically. She wrote about needing a fresh start. about being tired of pretending, and about how Curtis would be fine eventually. He always is. She wrote about me like I was a dying houseplant, something she forgot to water and then tossed into the trash without guilt. She called me comfortable. She said the hardest part would be pretending to care long enough to make the exit clean. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't even breathe. My eyes blurred as I reread her words over and over. She had made peace with breaking me, not in a fit of passion, not as a one-time mistake, but slowly, intentionally, like packing a suitcase for a vacation you never planned to return from. And the worst part? She wasn't even gone yet. She was probably still at that party, still laughing, still glowing in the wreckage she left behind, still celebrating the quiet death of everything we built. I sat there, shaking, staring at the screen, trying to figure out where the hell I had lost her. Was it last summer when I got too tired to go hiking with her? Was it when I forgot her birthday and tried to make it up with that awful sushi place she hated? Was it when I started wearing that same gray hoodie every weekend and let her do all the talking when friends came over? Or maybe it was never about any of that. Maybe she just outgrew me and didn't have the guts to say it like a human being. Or maybe she never actually loved me at all. The clock ticked past 2 a.m. The house was still. My phone was silent. No messages from her. No apology. No panic. No "where are you?" Just a ghost note on a counter, 2 plane tickets in my freezer, and a man too stunned to even cry anymore. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. And then I opened a new email. Addressed to Theo. Subject line, I know. I didn't hit send. Not yet. But for the first time all night. I wanted to. The sun wasn't up yet, but the sky had begun to bleed a dull gray when I heard the door open. Not slam. Not creak. Just open. Soft. Smooth. Like it wasn't carrying the weight of betrayal behind it. Like it was just another Tuesday morning, and my wife was coming home from yoga or a late grocery run. I didn't move from the couch. I had been sitting there for hours, staring at the wall, email draft still open, phone screen untouched. I didn't sleep. I didn't change clothes. I didn't blink long enough to count as rest. I was just waiting. For her. For something. Her keys clinked onto the entry table. Her shoes came off. I could hear her walking barefoot across the wood floor, the same way she always did. The casual rhythm. The little drag in her left step. She walked right past the kitchen, didn't stop to see the note she left, or the cake I never touched, or the freezer drawer I had left half open. Then she stepped into the living room and saw me. Curtis, she said, with this soft, almost bored surprise in her voice. You're up. 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 She said it like I had gotten out of bed to check the weather. Not like I had just watched her desecrate the ruins of our marriage in a stranger's bedroom, then uncover secret flights with a man who'd once borrowed my power drill and never returned it. Her tone had the same sleepy indifference she used when I forgot to take out the trash. I thought you were staying at Marcy's, she added, dropping her purse beside the armchair like we were still doing this stupid dance. I didn't speak. I just stared. I wanted to yell, scream, throw her phone into a wall, shake her shoulders until some truth spilled out. But nothing came. Just the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears like a war drum. Her eyes flicked to my laptop. She saw the email open. The subject line in bold. I know. She froze. For the first time in 12 hours, her face cracked. Just a flicker. Not guilt. Not even fear. But calculation. What exactly do you think you know? She asked carefully, wrapping one arm around herself. Her voice was still calm, but her body betrayed her. Her weight shifted back. Her hand moved slightly behind her hip, like she was preparing for defense. Like I was the threat. Like I had broken into her life. I was at the party, I said finally. My voice came out low and strained, like it had aged decades overnight. Her jaw tensed, but she didn't flinch. Oh, she said. One syllable, carved from stone. I expected excuses. Gaslighting. Something dramatic. But instead, she just walked to the couch, sat down across from me, and crossed her legs like she was in a meeting. You shouldn't have been there. That sentence sat between us like a trap. Like the real offense wasn't what she did, but that I saw it. Her fingers traced the seam of the cushion like she was bored. Or rehearsing a story. I stared at her. At the woman I had made Sunday pancakes for. The woman who cried when we watched stupid rescue dog videos. The woman who wore my hoodie when she had nightmares. And now? Now she was a stranger on my couch, waiting to see how I'd react. Like she was betting on how spineless I'd be. What's the plan, Alora? I asked, quieter now. Were you going to leave a letter on the fridge and disappear with Theo to what? Costa Rica. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Still, no apology. Instead, she leaned back and said, "It was never about Theo." I blinked. Then who was it about? She looked at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, not cruelly, not kindly, and said, "It was about me." And in that moment, I understood something awful. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a choice. One she had made long before I found the tickets, or the draft email, or the red dress on someone else's floor. She had already left me. She just hadn't bothered to walk out the door yet. I didn't respond right away. I let her words hang in the air like the final note of a song I never liked, but had memorized anyway. It was about me. Of course it was. It always had been. Every conversation that turned into a monologue. Every fight I apologized for even when I didn't understand what I'd done. Every moment she shrank from me and told me I was too much, too careful, too there. But somehow, hearing her say it with such calm finality, it freed something in me. I stood up. Not to shout. Not to beg. Not to plead for explanations I already knew wouldn't come. I stood up because I realized the version of me that stayed. The Curtis who would have taken the blame, cleaned up the emotional mess, tried to fix her. He was gone now. Quietly, without drama. Like a candle that burns itself out and leaves the room in peace. "I think you should go," I said softly. Elora blinked. That got to her more than yelling would have. She looked around the living room, maybe for something to anchor her, maybe for something to take with her. But there was nothing here for her anymore. Not in this house. Not in me. She stood, adjusted her sweater, and picked up her purse. No tears. No scene. Just a brief hesitation at the doorway, like she thought I might change my mind and ask her to stay. I didn't. She left. Just like that. No final words. No slammed door. The sound of her car starting outside was oddly gentle, like even the engine knew it was over. I stood by the window and watched her tail lights vanish down the street. I didn't follow. I didn't sink to the floor in pieces. I just breathed. For the first time in what felt like months, I filled my lungs completely. It didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the nights I spent doubting myself or the memory of her turning away from me like I was furniture. But it did something else. It made space. And in that space, I could finally hear myself again. Not the version of me she shaped. The real me. The one who still believed in decency, in showing up, in being loyal even when it hurt. I deleted the email to Theo. He wasn't worth the breath. Instead, I opened a new document and wrote something else. Not a letter. A list. Things I wanted to do just for me. Nothing to impress anyone. Nothing to prove anything. Just simple, quiet things. Like biking by the lake. Like rewatching movies I loved before I met her. Like calling my brother, even if he said, "I told you so." Like buying new curtains that didn't remind me of her. Like baking a lemon cake, for myself this time. Even if I ruined it. Especially if I ruined it. By the time the sun rose, I had made coffee, opened the windows, and put on a playlist I hadn't touched in years. The house still smelled like smoke and heartbreak, but something new was forming underneath it, something like light. She walked out of my life thinking she had the final say. But the truth? I got the last word. And it was this. I'm still here. And I'm just getting started.